Hello and welcome to the Oath and Staff podcast. I am A. David Singh, bringing you stories from people of medicine who serve humans and animals in unique and wonderful ways. In today's show, I am talking with author, innovator, neurosurgeon, and philanthropist, Dr. Hrishikesh Sarkar, or Rishi, as he is affectionately known. I met Rishi in 2003 when he was working in CMC Vellore, South India, in the Neuro Intensive Care Unit. And a year later, he began his neurosurgical training and has gone from strength to strength in his career that spans over 20 years. Welcome, Rishi. Welcome to Oath and Staff.
Thank you very much, David. It's been a long time and a great way to connect on this virtual platform. I'm very, very happy to see you and extremely glad to be here. I'm looking forward for the discussion, which I'm sure that we both are going to enjoy definitely.
Thank you, Rishi, for coming on today. Let's kick things off at the beginning. What got you started in medicine and later in neurosurgery? Is there a story behind why you decided to become a neurosurgeon?
That's a great question to start off and the difficult one, but just let me put through a story. The story dates back to me when I was maybe 3 year, 4 year old. One of my closest relative is a maternal uncle who is a doctor, and every time we used to go for vaccination, he was the person giving all these injections. So yeah, I used to see all the paraphernalia around there and see how the sick used to come and how to get treated. It was really, really nice to see that. So somewhere in my mind, I had the feeling that, oh, can I become like him one day? But that remained a small part. My parents have a good background of being social worker. They did their master of social work from Indore School of Social Work, and I have seen them doing great stuff to the society. It's been always been inspiring to what they do and what they contribute. So what else could be better than taking care of sick and becoming a doctor? Uh, Thirdly, this the reason also takes me back when I was in 12th standard, and I had both maths and biology, and I was preparing for IIT exam because I thought I was pretty good at mathematics. But during that time, I was given a project, or rather, we took a project which was held by a biology teacher for assessing blood groups in volunteers in our classroom. And the task was given such that we had to go meet the doctors, the pathologists, see the reagents, and try to understand why a person has A group, why the other person has B, and what is incompatibility. So, this was class 12th, and we were pretty excited by this scenario, and it was fun pricking your own classmates with the lancet and let the blood come out and say, so some people fainted, some people said, what are these guys up to? And they do not have medical qualification to do this. So it was very exciting, though we managed to exsanguinate a lot of our friends. And surprisingly, we got to know who is B and who is AB positive at the blood group. But what that taught me was the basics of science and how hospital functions, how the lab functions for preparing a report, and how is that impactful in planning a treatment, which was very, very fascinating to me. And lastly, um, there is some exam called SAT used to happen to understand where you are during your pre-medical course. And surprisingly, I was scoring very well in biology and physics. So I think, the universe was conspiring to to head towards being a doctor. So it's a combination of these factors that led me to definitely give a very serious thought about choosing medicine. And I think I'm very happy with that decision. I'm in a position today to help out those who require my expertise, my skill sets, and I'm very, very grateful and honored to be here today.
Rishi, thank you for sharing that deep and heartwarming story. You won't believe how grateful we are that you chose medicine and not engineering.
Sometimes I have that doubt, but I try to balance this by doing something related to engineering, computers, and all those things I've tried to do later on in life because I think more or less science, according to me, we are not limited by so-called artificially created boundaries like medicine, engineering. All this science, what it means to us is finding why and the how for betterment of humankind.
I absolutely relate to that. And as we go further into this talk, we will dissect more of your professional life, which exemplifies some of the things that you've just said. So, after your initial training in South India, which countries has neurosurgery taken you to?
Oh, neurosurgery has given me ample of opportunity to visit many places around the globe. Um, it started off with visiting Switzerland, where I did my fellowship in minimally invasive keyhole surgery. I was in Zurich, a place called as London Clinic, which is equivalent to an Apollo Hospital group in India. It's the largest private healthcare group in Switzerland. Then I went to Germany to learn more neuron endoscopic skills. Then a few years later, I went to Stockholm to understand the functional neurosurgery, the neuromodulation, the deep brain stimulation, spinal cord stimulation, and how is that impacting overall treatment care paradigms in pain, in movement disorders, epilepsy, as well as psychiatric disorders. Then there was some time I spent in Barcelona for learning neuroendoscopic and keyhole surgery. And when I joined by in my professional practice, I visited many countries to operate in the capacity of consultant neurosurgeon, and that ranges from Fiji, Seychelles, Maldives, Mauritius, Bangladesh, Oman. It has given me a lot of exposure to the healthcare scenario and the neurosurgical caseload in various countries and how people over there are tackling this in their capacity. So it has been a great journey all this while to understand how the rest of the world is doing in the fascinating field of neurosurgery.
You are quite the globetrotter, aren't
Oh
you?
yeah. As I talk to you, I am in the still jet lag situation. I recently went to US to attend the AANS conference, and I was in Chicago for some time to understand the nitty-gritty of neuro-oncology. So yes, I think traveling makes a person wiser. I would say it makes more humble to understand the great things people are doing outside. It inspires you, it gives you ideas, it exchanges thoughts and opinions. Traveling is something one must do to evaluate and become better version of oneself.
That is so well said. Rishikesh, you have worked in many non English speaking countries,
Yeah,
the ones you mentioned,
yeah.
especially in Europe. Did you come across language barriers and cultural differences? Can you tell our viewers and listeners a funny story about your experiences abroad?
The places where I went, like Zurich in Switzerland, it's a very cosmopolitan city. I spent time in a hospital, and I was with a professor who had a very good command over English. And English is more or less commonly understood in Zurich and in Sweden, particularly in Stockholm. So there were initial barriers communicating with the staff, with the patient, but colleagues were very much helpful in negotiating this problem. I had learned few uh, 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 things in German and Deutsch, uh, which was enough to do the daily task. So the main idea was to understand the neurosurgical principle, the neurosurgical caregiving, and also also the treatment protocols and paradigms, which I was able to do there. I was able to express my opinion. We wrote few scientific articles. So the main goal, the main purpose of uplifting the knowledge base by visiting so-called non-English speaking countries definitely was elevated. Do I think that If I had gone to English speaking country, would that have made a difference? I really don't think so. In fact, it was better that I could see the European way of doing things. All over the world, about 90% of things, it's all same. The real difference lies in availability of technology and availability of manpower and resources. I think that's what makes difference. So there been yes, language is an issue, and it could be an issue initially. So German, it's a language which is full of melody and intonations, and it's pronounced as written. For example, if you say nation, Nation, so they will say nation. So in fact, it's much easier than English, and they have this huge word Entschuldigung. Would you know what Entschuldigung would mean?
No.
Sorry. So Germans are notorious for having these long words for very small, small things. So it's a fun thing. Language, I know about five, six languages by now, and I'm very inclination for learning languages. I went to Chicago where Dr. Rogers Stoop was there, and he hails from Switzerland. So first thing I said, "Wie geht es Ihnen?" So he was shocked how this person from India is speaking in a Swiss dialect of German, which is so typical in Zurich.
That's great. You have this affinity for picking up things so fast, especially languages.
Yeah.
I do not have that skill, and I have spent some time in
Uh,
Japan
uh-huh.
where
Uh,
I've had hilarious experiences.
yeah. I've been to Japan, so I understand what you're saying. Uh-huh.
Some of those Japanese experiences I have talked about in previous videos
Ah,
on this podcast.
I see.
While we were talking about getting you on the show, I discovered that you have a special interest in keyhole neurosurgery.
Hmm.
Will you briefly explain what is keyhole surgery and how it benefits patients?
Right. So way back in 2010 and 11, I happened to see a book, a philosophy of keyhole neurosurgery. It was by Axel Pernitzky, who is no more now, and Professor Robert Reich. It was a book which transformed my life. It's such beautifully illustrated book that narrates the whys and hows of a keyhole to reduce the approach related trauma to the brain. In our neurosurgical practice, sometimes in order to reach the tumor, we spend more of time exposing the tumor as well as closing the entire wound rather than doing the most important thing, which is operating on the lesion itself. So this book really transformed my opinion about doing conventional neurosurgery, and it paved the way to understand that surgeries could be done in much more efficient way. Keyhole, it is not about the size. Make it smaller, smaller, smaller. Smaller is not sexy. Smaller is being direct, efficient, and accurate. So the keyhole surgery is adopting a philosophy of being more precise, more accurate, and minimizing the collateral damage to the brain and the important structures around. All this results into improved patient recovery time and also the cost. That was really exciting, and that led me to contact Professor Robert Reich in Switzerland. I wrote an email to him. I was not expecting any reply, but within 4 hours of my email, he said, "Come along, we'll take care." And I did ask him about the language. He said, "Not a problem, kind of problem." And there I was after 2 months in Zurich.
Rishi, in addition to being fascinated by unique and efficient surgeries, I remember you are quite the innovator. During your days as a neurosurgical trainee in Vellore, you had developed a surgical device called the Vellore Localizer. Will you tell us about the Vellore Localizer and its function in brain surgery?
Our idea of solving a problem related to a surgery called ventriculoperitoneal shunt, where the fluid is accumulated in the brain, which we call hydrocephalus. Hydro is water, cephalus is brain. To divert this fluid, we connect a tube which is placed in the brain and connected down into the abdomen. The problem associated with the shunt procedure is the accuracy. This catheter, which is put in the brain, is guided by landmark. But however, we observed that Vellore that by blindly following this so-called landmark, certain inaccuracies were cropping up. And this phenomena was not only exclusive to our practice, this was a universally seen worldwide. To circumvent that, we came upon this idea collectively. I must say this idea was not entirely mine. I was the main coordinator. I took the lead of finishing the idea generation to product development and its validation. So the credit goes to the entire team at CMC Vellore that involves our teacher, Professor Rajshekhar, seniors like Ranjit, Sumit, Samson. We all collectively put our thought process and hence we term this device Vellore Localizer. And by using simple calculations from the CT scan, we created a device, a very small, simple device, which could facilitate accurate placement of the shunt into the brain. And that translated into reduction in inaccuracies.
Excellent, excellent. Have you developed any other surgical instruments during your career?
Well, if I can recollect, there was a peculiar situation where multiple shunt surgeries had been performed and all had failed, and we had to resort to something called as ventriculo-ureteric shunt. That means that we had to put the tube into the ureters. Now, since the audience is going from medical backgrounds, I presume that they know what the ureter is all about. So essentially, we are connecting the brain, the CSF, to a cavity containing urine. And the problem with that, it's an ancient procedure which has been forbidden since many, many years, 50 years or so. But we had to revisit that. Uh, the problem with that is one has to remove one kidney completely because the tube will not stay there and there was no way to anchor this tube to the ureter. So I devised a small, simple maneuver or a trick where we could anchor this VP shunt tube to the ureter. And this was nothing but an infant feeding tube, number 8 in size. We slit the tube longitudinally and utilized this to buttress the tube and suture to the ureter. And this saved this patient's kidney, and we could perform this ventricular-ureteric shunt without a problem, which lasted for more than 9 years. I am also currently working on developing uh, a closure device for cellar floor defect. It's still under prototype. I think I'm trying to do things differently in order to make things easier for neurosurgeons and also for the patient.
This is all quite fascinating, Rishi. As you know, our listeners are mainly a medical audience. However, there are some medical students who also tune in and their parents. What advice would you give to a medical student who is considering neurosurgery as a career?
During our medical training, the exposure to neurosurgery is not much. So therefore, people do not get opportunity to understand fascinating things neurosurgery has to offer. My advice to medical students would be those who are interested in brain and brain related disorders to visit a neurosurgical department to really understand the progress in neurosciences. Neurosurgery is a very novel specialty. We started about 60 years ago in India. To where it has reached now, we are on par with the major neurosurgical centers in the world. It is a very fascinating journey in terms of technology, of acquiring knowledge. So neurosurgery has a lot of challenging avenues to offer, an exciting and adventurous journey. The medical student must visit the department. The thrill at the adventure is guaranteed. without any doubt.
Rishikesh, outside surgery, your creative talents have led you to excel in multiple disciplines. You code your own websites, you have developed multiple healthcare apps, and to my heart's delight, written and edited neurosurgery books and also a collection of poems. As a teacher, you provide medical education for both patients and young neurosurgeons through your website and YouTube channel. Your ability to work across multiple domains is what encouraged me to invite you to come on the show for a chat. It's not every day I get to talk to a polymath. Many of us who are tuning in may already know what a polymath is. But for those who don't, a polymath is an individual whose knowledge spans multiple disciplines. They work across complex bodies of knowledge and solve problems. Some polymaths that come to mind are Aristotle, Benjamin Franklin, Isaac Newton, and Rabindranath Tagore. This reminds me of a story about Leonardo da Vinci, the most well known polymath of all time. He was the artist behind famous paintings like Mona Lisa and The Last Supper. In addition, he also dissected cadavers and drew detailed sketches of the human anatomy. Da Vinci was most intrigued by the human heart and considered it a marvel of engineering. He sketched the chambers of the heart, the valves, and blood vessels. He theorized that the heart is a pump that directs the movement of blood through the body with absolute perfection. If you are listening to this audio podcast or watching the video version on YouTube or Spotify, you'll be familiar with his feats, especially if you are an anatomist or a cardiologist. However, today's story is a lesser known tale which many of you may not have heard. Let's travel back to the late 15th century. At that time, Italy was not a unified country. Instead, it was a collection of city states constantly at war with each other. Da Vinci was in his 30s and lived in Florence. Not satisfied with the commissions of painting and sculpting he got from his patrons, he decided to reinvent himself. The opportunity arose when the Duke of Milan was looking for a military engineer, so Da Vinci decided to apply for that position. In his application letter, it was written, I can build bridges and tunnels, catapults and trebuchets, boats and water diverting systems, mortars and siege machines, light, strong ladders and siege engines for storming walls. He had actually designed many of these devices, at least on paper. Although he was a painter and sculptor, structural engineering, architecture, and mathematics were a natural extension of his pre existing skills. At the end of his application, Da Vinci wrote, almost like a casual footnote, I can sculpt in marble, bronze, and clay. Likewise, I can also paint. If any of the above seem impossible or impractical, I am willing to prove them in your park or wherever your excellency may choose. Though this move was bold and risky, Da Vinci got the job and he moved from Florence to Milan. Over the years, Da Vinci designed all the machines he had promised the Duke of Milan, did studies on geometry, and designed everything from churches to fortresses. He also designed an armored wagon that was a prototype of the modern day tank. In his private time, Da Vinci painted. One of his paintings during this stint in Milan was The Last Supper. This story illustrates that polymaths can transfer a skill from one discipline to another with ease because where most people see boundaries and strict demarcations between different disciplines, polymaths see connections between different disciplines. Da Vinci knew that the Duke of Milan did not need a painter or sculptor. He wanted power and prestige. So Da Vinci took the leap from one discipline to another and gave the Duke exactly what he wanted. The reason why I told this story is because, Rishi, you are one of those few people I know who has also taken an incredible leap from being a neurosurgeon to the founder of a not for profit organization called the Ushakiran Foundation. I am reading this from your website. Trees bear fruit for the benefit of others, rivers flow for the benefit of others, cows give milk for the benefit of others. Similarly, this body is meant to serve others. I was really moved on reading your foundation's mission statement, and I have so many questions for you. First, what are your foundation's objectives and whom does it serve?
David, thank you very much for narrating the story behind Leonardo da Vinci. He's been so inspirational to me right from my childhood. I read about him via comic books. He was the first one to envisage a helicopter prototype. It's so striking that current day helicopters have got a resemblance to what he drew during the 15th century. It's just fascinating to understand this man and his contribution to humankind. And we've been really inspired by his work, so much so that we have nomenclatured our neurosurgical group as Da Vinci's Neurosurgical Associate. Very, very inspirational figure. Even if we have 0.005% of what this guy has, we can really make a huge difference to the world. Coming to the foundation, the story behind how it came was during the COVID. My professional journey started in Mumbai. At that time, I was going through a major personal crisis as well as professional crisis, and I was a completely lost entity. Mumbai, and life in Mumbai could be very, very tough in the beginning. You feel as if you're lost in the crowd. There was this old lady who happens to be my uh, distant grandmother. She was living alone there. Uh, though she had opportunity to go to US, however, she was very much sure that she would spend her lifetime in Mumbai. And she was very generous, not only to provide shelter, but to provide all the love, all the warmth, and all the things what one has to offer to their own grandkids. So I lived with her for some time till I got stabilized, and I became very close during that time. However, during COVID, I lost her, and despite the best efforts, despite being in a medical community, she lost the battle to COVID. So after a few months, I came to know that she had left a will, and that will has got certain amount of money. So I thought, why not utilize this opportunity to do good? God has placed me in a position where I can take care of myself, my family, and if this can be utilized for a larger good of the humanity, that would be more meaningful, and that would be an apt tribute to this lady who was such a humble, kind person. I thought that we should do something different and meaningful, and that brought the concept of Ushakiran Foundation. Her name was Usha, and Kiran is the ray. So the sun rays as a mark of positivity and cheerfulness. So Ushakiran Foundation strives to achieve three main objectives, which are very close to my heart. It's divided into three projects: imparting financial assistance to those children who require surgical intervention. So the foundation acts as a bridge to fill that gap and try to create a method in which the kids could be supported, particularly those with favorable prognosis and in whom a surgical intervention could transform their life. The project Gati is towards fall prevention elderly. We have elderlies also in a society who are neglected, and the most common of mortality or morbidity in elderly is falls. And there are various ways to prevent falls, right from education, providing tools, innovation, and investing in technology for fall prevention in elderly. Project Maitri is for children. Maitri is friendship. Gati geared towards fall prevention in elderly and supportive services. And lastly, Pragati. Pragati is development. And I really believe that India is right now fertile ground for developing data, for doing extensive medical research. But there are certain limitations to it. Primarily, they are finance related, not connecting to right people. So Project Pragati is about providing assistance, fellowships, scholarships to those deserving people, those who are interested in doing medical research, which could be impactful and contributing to development of our nation.
Rishikesh, thank you for sharing that heartwarming origin story about the Ushakiran Foundation and the multiple objectives that you undertake. Will you share a patient's success story? How
Yeah.
the Ushakiran Foundation touched their life?
So David, we recently launched this foundation and we did some work in a very small remote hamlet placed in Nilgiri Hills. So we went to this small village which we identified via our very talented young doctor who is spending her time over there treating about 50 villages where they have access to one so-called dispensary. It's not even a hospital, but it's providing basic medical care to about 9,000 to 10,000 villagers, which are of tribal communities in a remote corner in Nilgiris, where access to healthcare is such a difficult task. Forget about the healthcare. Going to their hut, going to their hamlet itself is a big task. There are no roads, there are only small, unpaved pathways crossing the streams with no bridges. I really have a lot of admiration and for the people who work for such communities. So we launched our foundation via this group which is acting for the tribals over there. We have adopted this dispensary come hospital which caters to 10,000 people in that community. Believe me, that 10,000 people did not have access to oxygen for various medical conditions. So we started off with supplying oxygen to concentrators and basic surgical sets, and also created a pathway where serious medical condition can be transported quickly to a referral area, which is about 100 odd kilometers from that place. So these are very early attempts. We are actively looking for volunteers to join us and support us in our endeavor. And I foresee in next couple of years to make this more bigger and impactful. Given the time frame and the busy schedule, it's very difficult to do so. But with well wishers like you and the people who are listening to you, I'm hopeful that this could be transformed in a very large project that can be beneficial to a huge section of our population, neglected and vulnerable.
Do you have any mechanisms to raise awareness in the general public about the Usha Kiran Foundation?
Uh, right now we have a website, Ushakiran Foundation. People can go access the aims, the objectives. In the long term, we plan to employ people working full time and come out with activities like donation drives, charity runs, connecting and linking people who are like-minded and who can join the cause and be a part of it, be an active participant and contribute as a very active team member. I think that would be more sustainable.
What steps are you taking to make your long term vision for Usha Kiran Foundation come alive? I ask this question so that those amongst our listeners and viewers who are thinking about starting their own foundations may get inspired by your story.
First of all, it is very important to understand how lucky we are to have proper meal for the day, access to good quality of healthcare, sanitation. Vast majority of population are not fortunate like us. Something which we have to realize. I believe in Viktor Frankl, I read him quite a lot. Say, what is the meaning of this life? What is the purpose of life? Purpose of life is basically to bring a positive change in others and enrich people's life. If one is on that course, he's bringing a meaning to his or her own life.
That is indeed profound. Thank you for sharing your experiences, Rishikesh.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now, could you tell us what activities do you do for leisure to balance your hectic life as a neurosurgeon, author, and philanthropist?
It's again a long list. And to start off with, I dabble in music. You're aware that we used to have music competitions in college. I used to play tabla and drums. Recently, I have learned guitar as well, rhythm guitar. So I like strumming with my friend. I plan to compose some music as well. That is in the pipeline. One more tick mark to to Da Vinci's, footsteps. Then I like dancing. Myself and my wife Sonia, we both do salsa and bachata. That has become some sort of passion. Yeah, apart from that, coding, traveling, video editing, making surgical videos, making YouTube videos for colleagues across the globe. These are some things which I really like.
Rishi, many thanks for taking the time for coming on the show, sharing a glimpse of your professional life, and for inspiring people who are listening. We wish you all the best for advancing humanity and giving our planet a better tomorrow.
Thank you very much, David, for having me here. It was wonderful reconnecting after so many years. I'm also fascinated by the kind of lead which you have taken in your life and very much inspired. I convey my best wishes to you in what you're doing.
And that's all for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Dr. Hrishikesh Sarkar. Thanks for tuning in and subscribe for more.